Thank you for joining today's webinar. Today we're going to be going over staff duties for villages. This is a part of a series of webinars we're doing for RunMyVillage users. We are a part of Club Express. What we'll be doing today is going over kind of a day in the life of village staff. So we'll be going kind of step by step through the process of what it's like to be a staff member for a village processing service requests for members. So today we're going to be taking a look at, like I said, the role of staff for villages. To overview some of the stuff we'll be taking a look at, we're going to talk about what staff members are for our villages. We'll be defining what we mean when we say staff. We'll also take a look at how to assign new staffers. So when you have people join your team, or if you're just setting up for the first time, how to set up those village staffers. We'll also take a look at the responsibilities of staff. So though it may not be related directly to RunMyVillage, we do often encourage staff members for villages to kind of receive phone calls and emails. That is usually the kind of primary role of staff, is to interface with both service providers and village members so that they can request the things that they need so they can be paired with a service provider to get their help. We'll also take a look at creating new requests. So we'll step through the process of creating a new request submitted by a member, either by a phone call or an email. Then we'll also take a look at what it looks like when a request is made by a member themselves. So members have their own ability to submit support requests or service requests through their own membership profile. Then finally, we'll take a look at assigning a provider. So one of the major roles of a village staff member is to pair a service provider with a member that needs a service. And once they have received that service, we will go through the process of closing that ticket. Another thing we'll look at is processing automatic open requests. So that is a different way for service providers to be paired with a member. That is an option where all service providers that are available are notified when an open request has been submitted by a member or entered by a staff member. And we'll take a look at how that works and what staff needs to do in order for that to be completed. And then we'll go through the entire completion process from there. All right, so let's take a second and talk about what village staff are. So a lot of our villages have maybe a team or one or two individuals. It kind of varies depending on the size of the village, but those people are usually the boots on the ground. They're the people getting calls, receiving emails, and just being kind of the interface between village members and the service providers directly. There are a handful of villages that use other tools offered by RunMyVillage, things like volunteer self sign up, and those villages would be completely self service and they may not have a staff, or the staff might have minimal interaction. But a lot of our villages do use staff or team members to interface directly so that there's more of a warm, personal connection between the service providers and the members themselves. We're also going to talk about the differences when we talk about staff. We're not talking about necessarily administrators. So lots of people viewing this might be administrators for their website. When we say staff, when we're referring to our villages, we're referring to specifically the people who are organizing the member service requests. There are a lot of other webinars for both Club Express and RunMyVillage where we refer to things like coordinators and administrators. And though there may be overlap for those, usually when we're talking about village staff, we're not talking about a website administrator, and we're not talking about the kind of configuration. We're just talking about the use of the village service tools. So the first thing we're going to talk about when it comes to covering our village staff is how to set up a staffer. So when you're first setting up with RunMyVillage, or when you are assigning a new person who has joined your staff team, the process of getting them set up as a staffer is fairly simple. There's two major steps to getting that set up. The first step would be going into your control panel. This would be something that would have to be performed by a website administrator, or at least a coordinator with a bit more access. What they would have to do is go to their control panel, and in the services tab of the control panel, they're going to go to the responsible staffers section of the services tab of the control panel. And there's simply just a button that lets them select the staffer and add them to that list. Once they've been selected as a responsible staffer, you'll see them appear in a few places throughout the services module, so they can be assigned to different requests and be listed as contact people. When we're talking about our staff as well, we also want to make sure that they have the access to the website in order to create and manipulate service requests and assign service providers to those requests. So there's one other step we want to take, which is heading over to the control panel and going to the Village tab of the control panel this time. And there is a button in the Village tab of the control panel called Administrators Coordinators. Now, this section is only available to website administrators. So this is going to have to be performed by someone on the Village's administrative team, not just any staffer. But once there, all you have to do is click on the Add Coordinator button, select the person that you set up as a responsible staffer recently, and then you'll select the Member Services box in the Services section that is presented to you. You're going to see a lot of checkboxes on that screen. We really only need the Member Services boxes. Or member services box selected. There will be a lot of other boxes you can check, and you can also come back here and add more options if it turns out that one of your staffer needs access to more than just member services. But for what we're covering today, if they have access to member services, they should have all the access they need in order to be an effective staff member. And then finally, once you've added them, you'll just scroll to the bottom and hit save on that page. And I'm going to let Ryan quickly take over for a minute. And Ryan is one of our village specialists, and he'll be doing our demonstration today. He's going to kind of quickly walk through the process of setting up a new staffer.
Hello, everyone. Let me really quick share my screen. Does that come up correctly?
I'm not seeing it just yet.
Showing on mine.
Here, let me stop my screen share.
I can see your screen, Ryan.
Okay,
Oh, great.
perfect. All right, everyone. So we can see right now I'm logged into our demo village Rolling Meadows. I am logged in as Martin Smith. He's an administrator on the site. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to go through the services tab in our control panel, and we're going to add a responsible staffer, as Devin just explained. So again, I went to the control panel. I'm going to the services tab. Martin Smith is a full administrator, so he has access to the entire system. And what we're going to go down to is in the setup section, there's an area called responsible staffers. When we click on here, there's a bunch of responsible staffers that are already in the system, but we want to add a new one. So I'm going to click add responsible staffer. I'm going to search for a responsible staffer. Oh, well, that's weird. Hold on. Well, we're going to go ahead and add Evan as a responsible staffer. And when we hit select, Evan will be added, or rather Stuart, will be added to the system as a responsible staffer so that we'll be able to see them later when we create a service. Now that that person is a responsible staffer, they may need access to the administrative side. So again, as Devin described, we're going to go to the Village tab. We're going to go down to the Setup section where it says Administrators and Coordinators. And we are going to click on Add Coordinator. As Devin described, there are multiple text boxes. What we can do is select Evan, or rather Stuart here. Select him, same member number as we selected for the responsible staffer. When we hit select, the member's name and number will show up right here. And we're going to scroll down to the services tab. Generally, staff members will have access mostly to just the member services. But in this case, we want Evan to have access to the entire area. So we're going to click check all. That's going to check everything for the services tab. And then we're going to scroll down and click on the save button. And we'll see that Stuart has been added right here. If we go back in, we can get back into those functions and add more or remove some if you would like, and then go back down and click save if we need. So I'll go ahead and pass back to Devin.
All right. Yeah. So that's the process of adding a new staffer. Thank you, Ryan. Let me
Yep.
share my slides again. So once we have a staffer added, let's talk about what they actually do as a part of their responsibilities. The biggest, probably most time-consuming thing that a staffer would do is receive phone calls and receive emails from members requesting services. So in this slide here, you'll see this is just a quick example of the type of basic email you'll get from day to day, but you could also get this type of information given to you in a phone call. So though it's not directly a part of something related to the Run My Village system, this is something that you'll be doing a lot of. And the primary role of most village staffers is to take this information that is either emailed or called into the village and turn it into a service request. So once we're doing that, we would take information like this and we would turn it into a new request. So in this example, we had our member emailing and asking for a transportation to the grocery store and help getting those groceries in. So once we've received that information, what we would do is we would go into our control panel and we would access the services tab that we were just given access to by Ryan. And we would come in here and we would say, we're going to take the information we were given, we're going to take those details, and we're going to match it to our new request and kind of fill all of that information in. You'll notice when you're creating a request, there's a lot of room for very fine detail. Always keep in mind there's only a handful of required fields. We would just need to take the information and only fill in what we need. We can always add more details as the service is kind of built out. We can always return to the creation page. But this is kind of the page that we're going to step to next and walk through the process of creating one of these service requests. This is also, and we'll talk about this more a little bit later. We're not going to go through this in our next demonstration here, but a lot of village service providers will kind of do two-in-one as they create these service requests. They will also add service providers, but we'll be talking about adding service providers to an existing request in a different slide. So we'll go over that a little bit separately. Ryan, let me go ahead and pass back to you
Sure,
and have you go through the process of taking that information and turning it into an existing request.
no problem. All right, again, we are on our home screen for Rolling Meadows Village. I'm still logged in as Martin Smith. Martin Smith is just going to go ahead and handle everything here. We are first going to go to the Services tab in the control panel. Right at the top left, we have Member Services. And this is for Jenny Adams, correct? This was a home request. You'll see this looks very similar to the screen that Devin just showed. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a transportation request in his picture. So we're going to go to transportation request. When we're selecting a requesting member, we have that right here. We can put in the last name of the requesting member, Jenny Adams. Select right here. We're going to put in, let's say, the 15th of this month. And it's usually advisable to do at least two of these time areas. So if Jenny has a general idea, I'd like to get picked up at 10:30. If there's an appointment, I know Jenny needs help with groceries, so it's not a hard time, but just an ideal time. 10:30 pickup time, and then let's say a return, a drop-off time. If we can do it by 2 p.m., that seems like plenty of time. So we're gonna do errands, grocery shopping. These are service categories and services that would have been set up prior to this situation. We would describe that in a prior video. Right now, we don't have a starting location or a destination, although we can say Aldi as a destination. This is going to be a round trip service. And then really all we're going to do now, we're going to skip all of this for now and go down to the responsible staffer. We're going to add Stewart as the responsible staffer who we just added. So this is Stewart's responsibility. And when we click save, it's going to say service request number 1145 is saved. And we can go back to that later once we get more information for service providers that are interested, or if we want to send out to them. I will
Great.
pass back to you, Devin.
So to now briefly talk about another scenario where services are created. So that was a service that was entered when a member either called in or emailed in, and the service had to be created from scratch. So that means that in this case, Stuart, or or more accurately, Ryan, or some staff member had to receive that phone call or email and actually plug all of that information into the system. There is another option. There are a lot of village members out there who are maybe a little bit more tech savvy or have just been using the system for a long time and have gotten very comfortable at submitting their own information through their member profile. So when you are a member of a village, you have the option to log into the website and go to your own member profile, and you can submit your own service request. Now, this is something that the staffers don't have to do. It is something the members will do, but we will take a quick look at it, at what it looks like for a member to do that. But when that happens, a few pieces of information are kind of important. An email notification will go out to a list of emails that is set up on your service options page. So this is something that our administrators, not necessarily our staff, should keep an eye on. So in the service options page, in the service tab of the control panel, you will see a field that says staff members to notify, and it will give you a box where you can plug in some email addresses. The email addresses that you put there will be the people that received notices when members submit their own service requests through their membership profile. It's not going to go to every responsible staffer that's been listed. So keep that in mind. If you're wanting those responsible staffers to get notified about member submitted requests, you need to make sure that their emails are entered on that setting in the service options page. Another important note is that your staff members will have to approve that request and finalize the settings before any staff members will be notified. So, obviously, if staff hasn't, or if service providers haven't been added to the service, they're not going to get notified about it. If you're using a tool like VSS, or if you're using a tool like automated open requests, then you need to make sure that your staff are going in there and approving that service request and filling out the details so that your service providers are able to get notified about that. Other than that, the workflow for a member submitted request and a member email or call in request are very similar. The biggest difference is just going to be that if a member submits it themselves, then the kind of basic shape of the information is already entered for you. It saves the staff a little bit of time by not having to find the member or plug in the service type or anything like that. The description, all of that is typed out by the member instead of by the staff. But the rest of the process is carried on the same. So adding your service providers, entering in more details about timing and things like that are all important. At the bottom of this slide, you'll see that we have an example. So this is an example. We have Susan here has submitted a request on her own. And this is the notification that will go out to the people that are listed, those email addresses that are listed in the service options page. So this is a little notification letting people know that a service request has been submitted. And you'll only see very basic information here. You'll see who submitted it. So it's from Susan. You'll also see what was it submitted for. So the service request was general transportation. And then for the requested service date, it just gives a text field. So it says Tuesday morning. It's very generic here. Someone can type in more specific times. If they say, hey, I want to get picked up at, 11:47 a.m. very specifically or something like that. They could freely type it in. But the service date that they enter here is just an open text field, so they can describe, as generally or as specifically the time that it is taking place as they want. And then finally, the final description of the service they're requesting. So here we're saying, Susan wanted a trip to the grocery store again, specifying, I want to go to specifically the Aldi on Main Street, and I want to go sometime Tuesday morning. It seems like Susan isn't super specific about the timing. So they're very similar to the one we were seeing from Jenny. but the only difference is this one was submitted by the member themselves instead of being submitted by the staff member. So I'll pass one more time back to Ryan to have a quick demo of what it looks like when a member submits their own service request.
All right. This time when we are looking, we are not logged in. We are going to get logged in as Jenny Adams. She would like to do pretty regular Aldi trips, it would seem. So what we're going to do, we're going to get logged in. You can see now in the upper right-hand corner, we are logged in as Jenny Adams. So what Jenny would do is she would go up here, go to her profile. We can see her profile right here. And right here under Village Services, we can see the request that was just created for Jenny will show up right here, but Jenny can also add a service request herself. When she clicks on this, as Devin described, Jenny has text fields for requested date and time and a short description of what she wants done. She also has the ability to select any of the categories and services that we have listed within the site. So if Jenny has an idea, it's just an errand, service is grocery shopping. Just like Susan, we're going to do sometime in the next 2 weeks. And then Aldi shopping trip. I forgot stuff the first time. And what this will do, once I click save, that's going to recreate a service, but it's a requested service, and that's going to send to that list of recipients, the list of responsible staffers or administrative staff. This will not be a confirmed or scheduled service. Instead, it's going to go to people to be approved, as Devin stated. And once it is approved, Jenny will be notified of that. I'll go ahead and pass back to Devin for the next.
So now those are kind of the different processes by which a service is created. So now we have existing services, whether it's been emailed in or called in or submitted by the member themselves. A member, one way or another, has said, I need help accomplishing, a trip or a trip to the doctor or, help setting up my computer. The service could be any number of things. We've been using a grocery trip as an example, but keep in mind services can be, any number of type of requests that they might need. So what comes next in the process is pairing them with a service provider to complete that request. Most commonly, I would say, is things like trips to the doctor, trips to the grocery, or, help around the house. Those are the type of things we see a lot of. And there's going to be two major ways of finding people to complete that request. The first way is having a staff member kind of seek out or select a person to complete that service. So when we take a look at that first way, where a staff member is picking someone or assigning someone or asking who is available for it, in that first group, there are two options as well. The two options that are going to be provided inside the service when a staff member is either creating the service or revisiting that service to select service providers, there's going to be two buttons you can click to begin the process of adding service providers. One of them is a little bit more general, and one of them is more pointedly specific. So the first one is the Add Service Providers button. You'll see it's this Add Service Providers with little kind of parentheses around the S, whether you can select one or more. And this is an option that will show you all of the people you can see on the left-hand side over here. Here's a quick little pop-up of what it looks like. It'll show you all of the people that are currently available to perform both that service type and at the time of the service. So if a service provider has said, hey, I'm not available on Tuesdays, then someone who submits a request for a Tuesday is not going to show up on that list. Or if someone says, hey, I can give someone a trip to the grocery, but I'm not comfortable taking someone to the doctor. If someone enters doctor visit, they're not going to show up on this list, but when they choose grocery, they will show up on the list on this left-hand side over here. So this is an option to let us check multiple boxes. We can select a bunch of different service providers and then notify all of them with a click of a button that we are interested in having them complete this service. So that is option one. Option two, when a staff member is selecting a service provider, is the quick add option. Many times, a service provider or a staff member will know pretty much immediately, oh, Susan has called in to go to the grocery, and I know that, Zara is always willing to take Susan to the grocery store. So I'll go ahead and just let Zara be the one. So if you already know ahead of time exactly who will be performing this service and you just need to log that person into the system, you can use the quick add option. The quick add option only allows you to select one person at a time, but it does ignore things like service and timing availability. So you can actually pick any service provider to add to the list, even if they're not available at that time. So this will let you kind of override those settings if there's someone will be completing this service, even if they're not showing up in that first option. So that is a way to add those people. Keep in mind the quick add is usually used when you've already discussed and confirmed with that service provider that they are willing and able to complete that service. So you don't want to use the quick add to add people that you're unsure of if they're going to be able to complete it. That's usually for, you've already confirmed that they will be the one selecting it. And then once you've selected them, you can do things like sending out requests via email. You can also do things like sending, confirmations once you've selected that specific service provider. And you can also send what's called not needed emails by, once you've selected someone and set the other service providers that you notified to the not needed setting, you can hit a button that says not needed, and that will send a notification to all of those service providers letting them know, hey, we no longer need you for this specific service. Someone has already been selected. So take a look at that process in motion. Let me pass back to Ryan, and he'll go step through with one of our service requests that we just created, and he'll go through the process of clicking through these and showing you what that looks like in motion.
Okay, so we are logged back in as Martin Smith. He's our administrator. I went to the member services section of the control panel. Just to reiterate, that's going to be in our control panel services tab, upper left-hand corner, member services. To find the service that we just created, I just hit the this month button, and I can see our request 1145 for Jenny Adams for the grocery trip. I'm going to click on the pencil to access the details for this. And as Devin described, I'm not quite sure who is going to provide this service, so I'm not going to use the quick add option. Instead, I'm going to click on the add service providers button. What that's going to do, it's going to bring up a list of all the fully vetted volunteers that provide this service. And I'm just going to click a couple of them to possibly get in touch with. So we're going to click on Ryan. We're going to click on Stewart. We're going to click on Burt Reynolds and Johnny Test. Now that I've selected all four, I'm going to hit the select button, and now it shows these four service providers that I've selected, as well as their preferred contact. So Stewart prefers to be contacted by phone. I can look up that information just by clicking right here. He doesn't have a phone number listed, so that's going to be difficult. But all the rest of these want to be contacted by email. And that's easy enough because this send new requests button is going to send an email request to each one of these users that has set contact by email. When I click on this, you'll be able to see 3 requests sent. And when we click on the details for Burt Reynolds, Ryan Eames, and Johnny Test, we'll see under notes that the request has been sent from Martin Smith right now. Assuming that one of these people has gotten back to me, let's say Johnny Test has gotten back to me, this status has changed to emailed. What we're going to do now is then select Johnny Test as the person who's going to provide this service for Jenny here. Now that I've clicked select, I can resend requests if Johnny decides to not do it or has not decided to be the person to provide the service. But I can also send out confirmation. So Johnny Test has confirmed that he's going to do this request. With this button here, I send out confirmations to both member, staff, and the selected service provider, which is Johnny Test. And then additionally, what I can do is click on this button here to send the rest of these users, Burt Reynolds, Ryan Eames, and Stuart Evan, the not needed. Well, email sent to 0.
I think you need to set them to not needed under status for them to get that email.
That's probably it, yeah. The demo club may not be set up for. So we're going to go to not needed, not needed, not needed, send not needed. Steven is, of course, correct. Whoops, that's my bad. Okay, so now an email has been sent to all three of these people letting them know that they're not needed. The status has automatically changed to confirmed because we have Johnny Test selected. So on 8:15, Johnny will go pick up Jenny Adams at 10:30, drop off by 2 p.m., and we'll be all good. Special instructions, we've explained this in previous, but I'll just go over it really quick, is if there's any special instructions needed for this particular service, you can plug it in right here. These things are variable items that the office staff can enter in manually, whether there's a need for member assistance or if there's some sort of driving thing. Once that's done, I can click save, and we'll see that now this has been updated. Service provider is now Johnny Test. The status is confirmed. We're just now waiting for this process to happen.
All right. So now we've got a service provider selected. Let me switch back to my slides. So now that we've got a service provider selected, that time will come, and let's jump a bit forward in time. And that service would be, completed on 8:15, depending on how you've configured your village, how your admins have configured your village. They should receive reminders and confirmation emails to make sure that everything happens smoothly. But for the most part, in terms of getting that service to the member, the staff's role is done. Before we move on to closing out the service, the final thing that a staff member needs to do in regards to that service, I do want to talk about briefly. We're not focusing in on it as the entire focus of this webinar, but there is an extra configuration that's available. I mentioned it very briefly earlier. There's an option called automatic open requests. Sometimes you'll hear us refer to it as AOR. It is a system that automatically notifies all available service providers when a service request has been submitted and needs to be completed. So similar to what we saw on that previous screen, when you clicked the Add Service Providers button and it showed you everyone that's available, if your village is using the automatic open requests option, everyone that is available to provide that type of service at that time would automatically get an email if this is set up. And in that email is a link to say, hey, I'm available to complete this. So that would then select them as the person for that service request. This does take some of the strain. If you have a large village with a lot of members requesting a lot of services, this can sometimes be attractive because it takes some of the strain off of the staff members. There is still staff involvement needed with the automated open requests option. So if you are using that option, staff do still need to confirm that service provider. So they need to send the confirmation email to the member, letting them know that a service provider has been confirmed. So a service provider can't just say, hey, I'll do it, and then walk the rest of the process on their own without staff intervention. We usually want staff oversight to make sure that, everything is on the up and up. There is a third option, which is something that I've mentioned 2 or 3 times now, which is volunteer self sign up. We will be doing a separate video, probably a shorter webinar, just on the way volunteer self signup works. Volunteer self signup is similar to automated open requests, except for it allows for a service provider to log into the website and assign themselves to a service, confirm it, complete it on their own, and then mark it as completed by themselves without staff having to be involved whatsoever. A lot of our smaller villages that don't have a staff are, very keen on using this themselves. And a few of our larger villages use it as well because maybe they don't have the ability to have a big enough staff for all of their villages. So it's a very attractive option, but it does take a lot of the oversight that having staff involved in the process gives you. So we'll talk about that at a different time. So there's not really anything for us to show on that because, again, processing automatic open requests, that is just a matter of logging in and, like we just saw before, sending out that confirmation email when the system automatically selects who will be providing that service. So once someone kind of gets in there and says it'll be me, there's not a lot that the staff has to do other than hitting confirm on it. The final part of staff duties is closing the actual request. So let's say we jump forward in time to August 15th. That morning, our service provider, Johnny Test, goes and helps Jenny get to the grocery store, gets Jenny home and helps her in with the groceries. It's been completed. There would likely be either a phone call or an email, or the staff member might just notice that the service time for that service request is in the past, and the staff member might go and look up and give the member a call themselves. And once they confirm with the member and the service provider that the service was completed, they would go in and they would record any ratings. So some villages use this, some don't, but they'll have an option to leave a rating. So, the member can say, hey, that was a 4-star service. Everything was great. They did drop, my milk jug and it spilled everywhere. So, not 5 stars, but 4 stars. They can also leave comments. So if the member has comments like that, they can leave it. And then additionally, if the service provider, the person that drove Jenny, to the grocery store, if they have any comments, those can be recorded as well. That way, if there's anything that needs to be, have a paper trail or something like that, we can keep that here. And they can also do things like marking how many hours they worked. So if it was a 2-hour grocery trip, that person will get, service credits, volunteer credits for providing that number of uh, hours of labor. And then additionally, you can mark things like the number of trips required. So if it was, a trip to the grocery store and a trip back, maybe that's 2 trips. And then, mileage, if you drove, 15 miles for that whole service. Maybe if your service providers get reimbursed for gas mileage or something like that, you can track that there, as well as tracking things like expenses. So if they bought some McDonald's on the way home or something like that, and want to expense it, what they spent on the member, you can list things like that there. So there's all sorts of reasons you might add mileage, trips, expenses, how long it took, and then there's kind of free text you can enter in both the member and provider comments. So I'll once again pass to Ryan for him to kind of click through this process and show you what it looks like to get to this screen, and show you what it looks like once you complete out a request.
All right. Everyone can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So we are in the member services again. We haven't really moved since changing Johnny Test, but we have fast forwarded. So this, we, Martin Smith sees that the time has passed. As Devin said, we followed up with Jenny Adams. We followed up with Johnny Test. And now the next step is to complete it. What we can do is the fastest and sort of easiest way is to click on this green check mark. That brings us into the screen that Devin was just showing. We're going to rate Johnny 4.5 stars because it wasn't perfect. That jug of milk did spill a little bit. The member comments were very helpful and kind. Johnny's comments were a sweet lady. Took less time than I thought. Because we had it set for around 4 hours before, but it actually only took 2 hours duration, as provided by Johnny. Number of trips 2, mileage only 5 miles, and then expenses, let's say $15 for McDonald's. And then This is another area where our responsible staffer shows up, verified by Stuart Evan. Generally, for this service request, I'm logged in as Martin Smith, of course, but Stuart would be the one who is taking care of this. So when we go through this, now when we click save, we'll see that we don't see that service request anymore because we're not searching by completed service requests. But if we change the search to completed and hit this month again, we'll see that show up. We'll see that the status has changed to completed. And when we click on this again, we'll see everything that we just entered into this. This will be recorded in the provider's notes, in the member's notes, as well as the rating associated with Johnny Test on his service provider profile.
All right. And that's pretty much what we had in store for you guys today. If you have any questions, please use the webinar chat or the Q&A to let us know if you have questions about what we showed. But yeah, today we were just kind of walking through the process. This recording will be available for all of those who attended. It'll also be available to those who are interested in it. We are kind of hoping that this is a useful tool for new staff members or new villages who are trying to get their staff up to speed on how to use the system. There's a lot of kind of more detailed things you can do with, timing, obviously adding things like multiple timings and adding multiple service providers to a single service. But today we were just trying to show the streamlined process for the most simple of services to getting you up to speed. And obviously, as your staff do this type of thing more and more of those kind of fine detail options will become easier over time. So let's see. It doesn't look like we have a lot of questions in the chat today. So we did get a question about where the video will be available. It'll take us a few days to edit it, and what we'll do is we'll put it on our YouTube channel. We probably won't list it on the Club Express YouTube channel, but what we will do is we'll put it on runmyvillage.com. So if you go there, we will have a recording, a link to the recording available there. And then we can also email out that link to all the people who attended the webinar today. So we'll send you guys an email here in a few days with a recording of this webinar. Let's see, we did get a question. Sometimes when I use Quick Add to assign a provider, the name does not show up. I thought it was because the volunteer wasn't available. Is there a way to add a service provider to the Quick Add? If you're not seeing all of your available service providers or all of your service providers that are listed should show up in the Quick Add. Am I right about that, Ryan?
The one thing we didn't talk about is that they do need to be fully vetted. So
Okay.
they do need to be fully vetted. If they are not fully vetted, they're still not going to show up in the quick add. The answer to your last question, is there a way to add a new service to a provider in quick add? No, there is not. You would have to leave the service and then go to the service provider section and add that service provider to that service before you used quick add.
Um, Yes. So that's and we did go over some of this. Our most previous Village webinar was about service providers and how to manage them. We also have several other tutorial videos on our YouTube channel about managing service providers. So you should be able to find a good amount of detail on how to make sure that a service provider is set up for that service and also fully vetted, because if either of those aren't marked correctly, they may not show up in that quick add option. I think the only thing the quick add, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ryan, but I think the only thing that quick add ignores is their timing availability. So if you're using quick add, you can get around someone who says they're not available on Tuesdays for a Tuesday service by using quick add. But if they're not available to, take someone to the doctor, they won't show up. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Alrighty, well, it looks like our questions have slowed down. Like I said, we'll have the recording of this available in just a few days, and we'll send that out by email. It'll also be on runmyvillage.com, and we'll see you in our next webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you next time.